I'm Catherine, and I'd like to thank you for watching Ms. Yarn.
This video is on how to loom knit a figure 8 mixed scarf.
This figure 8 mixed scarf is based on a stitch that I've seen by watching Spanish videos and Spanish Pinterest images, where it's referred to as punto saliente. So you can see the description below for a link to more double knitting stitch patterns. Now, before we get started, I'd love it if you could subscribe to my channel if you haven't done that yet. That way you won't miss out on any of my loom knitting tutorials.
Today we're going to cover number 1, how to cast on, number 2, how to do a mix of figure 8s, number 3, how to add new yarn, and number 4, how to bind off. For the supplies, you're going to need 2 balls of yarn. I used Estelle Bulky, which looks like a number 5. You're going to need a long loom, a hook, a pair of scissors, and a yarn needle.
We're going to cast on using a figure 8 cast on. So we'll put a loose knot on the anchor peg at the side of the loom. Let's wrap the top peg counterclockwise and the bottom peg clockwise to make a figure 8. Then we'll make more figure 8s like this all the way to the right.
I used 13 pairs of pegs, so 26 pegs in total, but you can also use 10 pegs or 16 pegs, depending on the width that you're looking for.
So at the last set of pegs, just pull your yarn downwards and wrap that bottom right peg counterclockwise, and then rewrap the top peg, and then start making figure 8s all the way to the left of your loom. So just retrace your steps and make new figure 8s right over top of the old figure 8s.
So let's wrap the last peg, which is the top left peg, and we'll knit over. And that means we take the bottom loop with our hook and we put it over the peg towards the center of the loom.
I'll knit over all of the bottom loops of this top row.
And then we knit over all of the bottom loops of the bottom row. And the peg at the very right just has one loop, so just ignore that one, and knit over the 12 bottom loops of that bottom row.
So we need to tighten the cast on, and this is just one way that we can do that. So we'll go to this bump on the right and we're going to pull it upwards with our fingers to take out the extra yarn. And then we're going to make our way towards the left and we're going to keep pulling on these bumps.
I'll also show you how to remove the extra yarn with the help of your hook. You might find that easier. In any case, whether you're using your fingers or a hook, just take out the slack by pulling on those bumps and work your way all the way to the left of the loom. So here I've gone ahead to the left side of the loom. And I'm pulling upwards on that last bump. Then I'm going to remove the knot from the anchor peg. And I'm going to pull that yarn towards the left. And I'm going to take out all of that extra yarn with me. Then I'm going to tie a knot with the working yarn. And I'm going to lay that tail across the loom. Then I'm going to push everything down, and now the figure 8 cast on is finished. So before we get into the demonstration of the stitches, I wanted to show you the results of the regular figure 8s, which is on the very left here, and the large figure 8s right there, which as you can see has like a herringbone effect to it. This is a regular figure 8 and then a large figure 8. So again, it's tighter,
a regular figure 8, and a large figure 8. You can also see that there are lacy columns in between the figure 8 stitches, which I think is a great effect. And that's why you shouldn't use yarn that's too heavy or too thick, because you want that air going through your scarf. So let's put aside the navy blue version and we'll go back to our mustard yellow. So for the first figure 8, we're actually not going to touch the top peg. Instead, we're going straight to the bottom. So let's wrap that bottom peg clockwise. And now let's go to pegs 2 and 3 at the top, and we're going to wrap those together to make a large figure 8. So on the top, you're wrapping counterclockwise, and on the bottom, you're wrapping clockwise. Next, at peg 4, we're going to do a regular figure 8. And then on pegs 5 and 6, as you can see, we're doing a large figure 8. On peg 7, we're doing a regular figure 8. And then for pairs of pegs 8 and 9, we're doing a large figure 8. So we're going to continue with this pattern. This is why I'm using 13 pegs. It's because we need a multiple of 3 plus 1. So here I'm at the last set of pegs at 13. So we'll wrap the top peg. We'll pull our yarn down to wrap the bottom peg. And now I'm going to knit over that bottom right peg. So as you can see, the large figure 8s have one loop going over top of 2 pegs on the top and 2 pegs on the bottom. So let's continue with the stitch by knitting over. So let's work our way on the bottom row, knitting over all of those bottom loops. Then we'll move to the top row, and that very first peg we just ignore because it only has one loop on it. So we'll be knitting over 12 of those bottom loops. And now we push everything down and row 1 is done. So now let's work on row 2. And at that last pair of pegs, we're going to ignore the bottom peg and we're just going to wrap the top peg. So let's wrap that top peg 13. And then we'll use pegs 11 and 12 for the large figure 8. Then peg 10 is for the regular figure 8. And then pegs 8 and 9 are for the large one. So let's work our way towards the left. So at the very left, we're going to wrap the bottom peg, and then the top peg. Let's knit over peg 1 at the top to secure things in place. And now we're going to knit over all of those bottom loops. On the bottom row, we ignore the 13th peg and we knit over along the 12 remaining pegs. So let's push down our work and row 2 is done. So for the body of your scarf, you need to repeat row 1 to work towards the right and row 2 to work towards the left. So knit on your own, and let's meet later when it's time to add new yarn. It's time to add a new ball of yarn, and this is just one way that you can do that. I'm going to do a magic knot, which is made up of 2 small knots that are side by side. On the bottom, you see the old yarn, and at the top is the new yarn. We'll put the old yarn under the new. Then the old yarn will go over the 2 strands. And then the old yarn will go up through the loop. And then we'll pull on both strands of the old yarn. The new yarn will go over the old. It will go under those 2 strands. Then the new yarn goes down through the loop. Now let's pull on the new yarn. Then we pull the longer strands. And then we cut off the ends. So that's the magic knot, and I'm linking above to a video from Bella Coco to show you where I learned it. So now that you've added this second ball of yarn, just keep knitting and we'll meet again when it's time to bind off. Now I'm at the length that I want, and I'm going to do a row of regular figure eights to make this bind off edge as straight as possible. I'm jumping ahead to the last few pegs. I'm knitting over that very last peg to secure things in place, and then I'm going to knit over along the entire loom. Since the working yarn is at the right, we're going to bind off from the left. So we'll bind off from the top left peg. Put the top loop on the bottom peg. Dive in with your hook to scoop up the bottom loop. Now put that loop on the next top peg. Dive in with your hook again to scoop up that bottom loop. Then put that loop on the next bottom peg. Again, you'll dive in with your hook to scoop up that bottom loop. And now we put that loop on the next top peg, which is peg 3. Dive in with your hook again to scoop up that bottom loop. Then put that loop on the bottom peg. So let's continue to bind off in this manner, and we'll meet again when we're closer to the right side of the loom. Here I've gone ahead and I'm on the last peg. So I'll dive in with my hook to scoop up that bottom loop. I'm going to hold it with my left hand and I'm going to cut off the yarn. I'm going to put the tail through that loop and I'm going to move the loom out of the way. I'm tightening that last knot a little bit. And now let's have a look at this bottom edge. So now it's time to weave in the tail. So let's thread the yarn needle. I wanted to go in one direction and then have enough yarn to come back in the opposite direction, which is what I did. But looking back now, I see that I could have made this more secure by actually weaving alongside each stitch. So you can either be fast like me and do what I'm doing, or if you want, you can also take your time to make your tail more secure and invisible. So here I'm going in the opposite direction. And then I'm just cutting off that tail. Now let's go back to the cast on edge. And now we'll just simply snip off the end because this piece of yarn has already gone through the width of the scarf. And now the figure 8 mixed scarf is finished. If you like this video, please try to make something inspired by this tutorial and feel free to leave me a comment. I'd love to hear from you.